This was submitted by Chair85 under the subreddit Creepy Encounters. Title: Campsite Weirdness. I've been really wanting to share this story for some time now, but haven't really found a good outlet for it until stumbling across this sub. The other people involved don't really like talking about it. It's upsetting and doesn't make us look good. But I just think it's a great, awful story at this point. Sorry, this is going to be a long one. Names changed to protect personal info. 5 years ago, my wife and I went on a weekend camping trip with our two closest friends, another married couple. The campsite is just outside of Yosemite and absolutely beautiful. The beauty of it and the creepiness of it is that you take a dirt road for about an hour and a half off the main road to get to it. It's extremely secluded, but never felt threatening. It's a really popular campsite, so there were always people around, especially in the summer when this occurred. The first day was awesome. I don't remember exactly what we did, but I remember having a great time. The campsites are all fairly close together and usually separated by various shrubs and etc. I remember we were all pretty pumped about the site cut, as there were no neighbors on one side, just forest, and no one occupying the site closest to us. This is uncommon, as these campgrounds stay fully booked throughout summer. Day 2 started normally. We had breakfast, then headed to the lake for a couple hours. The lake was about a 20-minute hike from the main campground. When we got back around 2-ish, we noticed that the site next to us now had a silver rental car parked on it. We didn't think much of it and went about making a fire to cook with. At some point we noticed the occupant of the site next to us, a pretty average looking white dude, maybe early 40s. Honestly, he was so average looking that it's hard to even picture him. We all immediately caught on to the fact that he was constantly looking over at us. My friend Dave even made a comment to me under his breath. You notice this guy keeps looking over here? I remember feeling a little uncomfortable, as we were all still in bathing suits from the lake, but made conscious effort to ignore it. It's worth mentioning that we were a little buzzed or drunk, not out of control or anything, just feeling pretty good. Throughout the afternoon and into the evening, we continued to notice the guy constantly looking over at us. In hindsight, Dave or I should have called him out. This story doesn't make us look great, but whatever. I had been stressed at work prior to the trip and really didn't want to let some creepy dude throw off my relaxed vibe. Stupid, I know. The alcohol coupled with the fact that we honestly kind of felt bad for him led us to not confront him. Yes, it was very creepy, but I told myself it was just an awkward, lonely dude. Aside from the staring, there were a couple of mildly weird incidents that occurred leading up to the very weird stuff. The first was that, at some point, he left his side to go do whatever. While he was gone, a girl, probably in her mid-20s, our age, walked by and snapped a picture of his license plate. I remember asking her if she needed anything, and she smiled awkwardly and kept walking. Dave and I both thought This was odd, but were preoccupied with beer. Later into the evening, around 7-ish, the camp host was doing her rounds, checking people in. She checked us in and moved on to him. I remember us all eavesdropping intently to hear what they were saying. I think we just wanted to hear what this creep sounded like. He kept asking questions about the bathhouse. We didn't know there was a bathhouse, or even what a bathhouse was, but he had like 100 different questions about it. Where is it? How late is it open? Is it private? Maybe not that weird, but in context, definitely odd. The sun started to go down. We were all drunk, so we weren't too concerned with the creepy dude anymore. At one point, we went for a walk and noticed him snooping around what we believed to be the bathhouse. Now, I would call out this kind of behavior, but again, I was drunk and 5 years stupider at that time. We all laughed and talked about how creepy he was. Back at the site, we continued to drink and have a good time. At one point, the guy started eating beans aggressively out of a can in the light of his single lantern. No fire. He looked at us while doing it, and Dave and I kind of snickered to each other at how weird it was. I don't think the girls noticed. Eventually, we decided to go to bed. I think the guy had left his side at this point. I kind of remember us making jokes like, I better not wake up to that dude looking in our window, haha. My wife and I slept in our SUV with the seats folded down. Dave and Sarah sleep in the camper shell of their truck, and I remember feeling a little creeped out as I fell asleep but shrugged it off. At around 2:30 a.m., both my wife and I jolted awake by we thought was a woman's scream. We both looked at each other and asked if the other had heard that. We came to the conclusion that it was probably people at some other site being loud, and decided to go back to sleep. As I was trying to go back to sleep, I started feeling very unsettled. I decided to get out of the car and take a look around. I cracked my door, trying to be as quiet as possible. I had gotten about one leg out of the car when I heard faint but direct whispering coming from Dave and Sarah's camper shell about 4 feet away. I froze and then heard it again. I eventually realized that they were trying to tell me something. I whispered back, "What?" I then clearly heard Dave say, "Start your car." I instantly realized that something was wrong, so rather than ask questions, I climbed back into my car and started. Right away, Dave and Sarah bursted out the back of the camper and frantically jumped into my car. They told me to drive. They were too freaked out to explain anything, so I just drove kind of aimlessly. Eventually I pulled over, figuring we were far enough away from whatever had freaked them out. Finally, Sarah calmed down enough to tell us what had happened. As she put it, she was woken up by a light coming from Creepy Dude's campsite. Apparently, he had set up lanterns and flashlights to spotlight himself, completely naked, masturbating in the direction of our cars. She also mentioned that he was flaccid and not able to finish. A gross detail, but I feel it's important. It gets weirder. At some point he stopped and turned off the lights, and began using a flashlight to signal across a small ravine that the campsite's backed up to. I'm talking like Morse code or something. Across the ravine, an old RV began using its headlights to signal back. Dave was awake by this point. I questioned them on this detail, and they both said it was very clear that they were communicating. After that, he turned off his light. Keep in mind, it is absolutely pitch black out there at night. After a few minutes, they heard footsteps around their car, followed by a hard tap on the window. That is what caused Sarah to scream, hence waking me up. At this point, I decided that we needed to call the police. The problem was, there was absolutely zero cell service at the campsite. Furthermore, it was about an hour and a half, a service road from what was already a very remote part of the state. So leaving at night wasn't an option. We decided the best course of action was to alert the camp host. We drove around and eventually found the trailer she lived in. She was understandably confused to be woken up at 3:30 in the morning, but was responsive. She mentioned that the guy was really weird when she checked him in, and called the police on her satellite phone. Apparently, there was massive wildfire burning that weekend, and the police said they wouldn't be able to send anyone until sunrise. The camp host said there really wasn't anything she could do beyond calling the police. It really sucked hearing that. Basically, we were stuck in our car in the pitch blackness while some crazy masturbating dude was out and about, not to mention whoever was in that RV. One more really weird thing happened. At around 4 a.m., we were still sitting in my car when a man in a hood walked right up to the window. The second I noticed him, I turned on my engine and headlights. He ran off into the trees. We all sat in my car until sunrise. Once light was out, we went back to the site to pack up our things. His car was still there, with blankets hung in all the windows. The whole thing just felt gross, and we wanted to get the hell out of there, so we quickly packed up and left. A couple of hours after we left, I got a call from the police. They said they went out of the campsite and questioned the guy. He said he was simply showering. The cop told me there was nothing he could do. It was our words against his. He also questioned the people in the RV. They said they didn't know what he was talking about, but mentioned that, and I quote, "a very rude camper screamed in the middle of the night." The whole experience with the police was frustrating. I tried following up. I even tried getting help from a family member who was a sheriff. But even he said there wasn't anything they could do unless that particular police chief really wanted to investigate this guy. So that's the story. I learned a lesson about being polite when someone is making you uncomfortable. Nowadays, I'm much more aggressive with creepy people. I also know it's easy to hear this story and wonder why Dave or myself didn't just confront the guy, especially when he's literally masturbating at the car you're sleeping in. I don't know. I wish we would have showed more courage. But honestly, it was really scary in the moment. I'm okay with admitting that. Now, I think it's kind of funny, just how stupid we were, and how bizarre the whole situation was. I also feel fortunate that no one was hurt. Clearly, we were dealing with a very fucked up individual who had accomplices. I can only imagine what their end goal was, and what they would have been capable of doing. I also think they had done shit like this before. I just really wish the police could have done something.